Hi! Welcome to my August wrap up. I don't have my hair out often, but it's still like on the end of drying, so we've got it out. Alright, I read all too many books in August. I read that. Excuse me, ma'am. I read 35 things. We're gonna go through them as quickly as possible today. I have my guide to my Trixie is bothering me. A guide to my ratings here. And we're just, gonna go through as quickly as we can. I do talk about most of these in vlogs throughout the month, so do check out my new release August vlogs if you want to learn more about any of these, my thoughts on any of these in like detail. But we're just gonna go through them today as speedily as possible. I had how did I know that was gonna happen? Right, that was a baby bite. I had 2 DNFs. I don't think I had any 2 stars, quite a few 3 stars, quite a few, like lots of 4 stars. So let's get started. Alright, so first off in the month I finished Serpent, Thorn by Melissa Bashiraast. This is a Persian fantasy. We're following our main character whose name is Soraya, and she is poisonous to the touch. I think it's meant to be the same mythology that Shadami is based on, but that's like a dystopian sci-fi version of the mythology. This is a high fantasy version. This reads like a folk story, and she is, it's like a am I a villain or am I a good person kind of story, and it has a sapphic relationship involved. There's also monster girl dynamics. I really enjoyed this. I ended up giving it a 4 stars. It was just shy of a 5 stars, but this honestly stuck with me pretty well, and it was pretty dang good. So it's definitely a high 4 star. I think I had a few problems with pacing, I think, because it kind of zoomed through some parts and you could kind of see where it could have been spread out into a trilogy, but then rushed certain parts of the arc, if you know what I mean. But I really loved this. I would definitely recommend it to people. It was super good. I listened to the audiobook of A Song Below Water by Bethany Seymour. I also gave this one, I gave this one 5 stars. This is a siren story set in like a fantabulous modern day, I think it's Atlanta? No, Portland, Oregon. And we follow Tavia and Effie and their sisters. Tavia is a siren. Effie has her own powers. She's not sure what she is though. She's got some powers that she's not really sure what's going on with. And in this world, they're dealing with the intersectionality of being black women, but also sirens who are further marginalized because they have the power to compel other people. So that's considered like evil, I guess. And so it's dealing with intersectionalities of all those things, and then a like Black Lives, Siren Lives Matter kind of movement happening. And I just thought this was really powerful and really beautifully written. I liked the 2 characters' perspectives, and yeah, it just really worked for me. I did really enjoy the audiobook, but it is really short and it is fantabulous modern day, so if that's not your kind of thing, it might not work for you. But I personally really loved this and I gave it 5 stars. I read a Shakespeare play, and that was Henry IV Part 1. I gave this 3 stars. It was alright. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I didn't think there was much going on with it, to be fair. But I think I'm figuring out I don't really like Shakespeare's history plays all too much, but I think I want to read a few more of them before I like solidify that opinion. But this was entertaining, but nothing, like kind of entertaining, but nothing fabulous. I also read 3 volumes of The Wicked and the Divine this month. This was the last 3 volumes. So we have, I think it's 7, 8 and 9. Okay, Old as the New New, and Mothering Invention were the 3 that I read, which finish out the Wicked and the Divine series. I did enjoy finally coming to the conclusion of this series. I gave them all 4 stars. Yes. This series I really enjoy, but it takes a while. Like, I think now would be the perfect time to read them, now that they're all out, because the start is definitely confusing, because what is going on is kind of the mystery of the whole thing, but it slowly gets revealed volume by volume. And I think jumping in at the start is really confusing. But once you settle into the plot and you're starting to learn more and more, it becomes really, really good. And finishing up and figuring out what was going on was super great. One of these is like a shorts and outtakes. Like, they did a series of like little short snippets that were flashbacks to previous historical events relevant to the world that were coming in between different volumes. So one of those is like a compilation of all of those, and I loved that volume. I think it's the Old is the New one. Yes, Old is the New. And then the end was a series of funny shorts that aren't directly part of the series. They're all like parody, I guess, from different artists. And yeah, the finale was just really good. This is a great series. I love it. Definitely now is the best time to pick it up. Essentially, in this world, every 90 years, a bunch of people suddenly become gods. They like ascend, so they live in their normal life, and then suddenly they're a god. And then all of them, they live for like 2 years and then they all die. And that's what happens over and over again. And we're following the modern day group of these gods. I think it's like 12 of them each time. And so yeah, that historical one goes back to previous incarnations of the gods. And yeah, it was just it's a good series, and I'm so glad I finally finished it. I also read Glasstown by Isabel Greenberg. This is a fictionalized graphic novel of the Bronte siblings growing up, and the different worlds they created with each other. I gave this a 3 stars. I think for me, the art style is not my favorite, and the story was entertaining but could have been better. It kind of dragged a bit in places. But I really want to read, what's it called, that's also by this author, The 100 Nights of Hero. I think it has the potential to be a much more compelling story for me personally, but I did really enjoy this. It was a 3 stars. It was good. It was good. It was like a good 3 stars, not a like meh 3 stars. I also listened to I read on my ebook format, Talking to My Country by Stan Grant. This is a non-fiction memoir about growing up Indigenous in Australia, and it was amazing. It's very short, but explores lots of different facets of Stan's childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and becoming, like, I guess in Australia it's very much seen as rising above his station to be successful as an Indigenous person, and so what that means and how that alienates him from his sense of self and all kinds of things. It was complicated and interesting, and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I would 100% recommend this, especially to Australians, but to anybody. I think it gives a really good insight to what it means, like what Australia is as a invaded nation, and it was really powerful, so I gave it 5 stars. Changing tack a bit, I read Once Upon an Eid by S.K. Lee and Aisha Saeed. This is a compilation of I can't remember how it went, 15 middle grade short stories centered around Eid, and I personally really enjoyed this. I thought it was a great collection. The stories were all really engaging, and I think I ended up giving it a 4 stars. Yes, which is high for me in anthologies. I generally struggle with anthologies because there's always some I really don't like and some I love. They were all good or very good. I don't think there were any of these that I didn't like. I would 100% recommend this, especially for younger readers. It's diverse within the Muslim faith, and also if you're not Muslim, it is a good like starting point, I think, for introducing religious diversity to children. Yeah. Next up, I listened to the audiobook for The Sound of Stars by Alicia Dow. This is a sci-fi set in the very near future where the country has been taken over by this race of aliens that are setting it up to be used as like their vacation spot. And we're following what's her name? Ellie, who is human, living on Earth, running a secret library. And then Morris is part of this alien race, but there's kind of like two levels to the alien race, like the overlords and then people they designed who were suitable to live on the planet, who would go into like terraform the planet, and he's part of that secondary race. And he really loves pop music, which is also forbidden. Like books, music, anything like that is like has the potential to bring about rebellion, so that's all like a no-no. And it's kind of their romance and love story. I ended up giving this a 4 stars as well. I did really enjoy the audiobook. I thought it was well paced and fun, but oh, and there were things I absolutely loved representation wise, like Ellie is black, fat, demisexual, can't talk to the black representation obviously, but the fat and demisexual stuff was done really, really well. And the like overall romance I thought was maybe not necessary but well developed. This is kind of like just not my ideal book. I think this is more like a romance in a sci-fi setting than a sci-fi with romance elements. I think I just kind of wanted it to be the other way around to be a perfect 5-star, but it was fun, and I just think it could have gone a lot further. This is like the superior version to me of those sci-fi romances that were coming out in like 2012, and I found them really corny. So this was also like a little bit corny, but in a good way. So yeah, I gave it 4 stars. I did think it was really fun. Then we have Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty. This is the final book in the David trilogy. I also gave this one 4 stars. It's chunky. It's probably my favorite from the series, but the series just isn't absolutely perfect for me. I find them a little bit long, and the writing is very heavy on descriptions and atmosphere, and it just doesn't quite balance right for me. It's just not my taste in the writing style, but I did really enjoy it. I like all the characters. The plots are just, a lot happens, but also doesn't have a strong driving plot, which is another thing I'm like becoming more and more aware that that's something I really prefer in a book. This is just not perfect to my taste, but I thought it was well executed for what it is, and I really like generally enjoyed my time reading it. It just wasn't like 5-star material, so I gave it 4 stars, and it was a time. I finished actually decently quickly for its size, and I would definitely recommend this series because they are great. The first one is a bit of a slog in my opinion, but from the second book we go on places. Then I read The Damned by Renee Ardier, and this got a generous 3 stars from me. This is a sequel to The Beautiful, which is a gothic New Orleans vampire series. This kind of took off where the last book ended, and for me it's had major second book syndrome. It was very much setting up characters for where they're going to be for book 3, and I feel like nothing happened in this. The things that were really great about book 1 was the atmosphere was lacking in this. The characters, we followed different characters in this because of kind of what happened at the end of the last book, and then it introduced some elements I really didn't give a shit about. So this was a generous 3 stars. I do think I'll read book 3 because some things were set up that I'm really keen on, but other things were just meh. All the mystery and atmosphere was gone, which was what was so good about The Beautiful. So 3 stars, it's generous. Then I read The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu, and I gave this one 4 stars. This is a retelling of kind of like a fantasy retelling of Mozart and his sister Nannerl, who were both composing at that time, but obviously Nannerl was a woman, so she wasn't allowed to publish under her own name. And And this kind of sets up as if the two of them have this secret world they go to at night that then influences the actual world. I really enjoyed this. It was a good ride, but it was very slow. Historically, fiction has a tendency to sometimes be slow. And the other thing that I thought didn't work well for this was that in keeping to some of the historical elements, this got a little repetitive in its plot. But overall, I did enjoy it, and I gave it 4 stars. I thought the characters were really fascinating, and the interweaving of the fantasy and history was well executed. This is probably my favourite Marie Lu I've read, but I haven't read that much from her. Next up we have I Killed Zoe Spanos by Kit Frick. This I also gave 4 stars. I thought this was so well designed. This is a YA thriller, mystery thriller. We're following Anna, who moves to this town in the Hamptons. Yes. And she's babysitting for the summer, and everybody's like, wow, you look so much like Zoe Spanos, who went missing. And she's like losing her mind, and it's flashing forward, like backwards and forwards between her like starting out in the summer and then after the summer, or in the middle of the summer, I don't know. Later on, she confesses to killing Zoe, and so you're seeing her from prison talking about it. Also, one of the other girls from the town is doing a podcast, like one of Zoe's best friends is doing a podcast trying to figure out what happened. And so all these things are intersecting. Who really did it? Because it's kind of obvious from the start that Anna's standing up saying, I did it, so obviously not. And it was really fascinating. The podcast elements were done really well on the audiobook. It was a good listen. I did read along for some of it. The twists and turns were great. I didn't predict most of it, but if you read a lot of thrillers, you probably might have. I don't know. Yeah, I really enjoyed my time reading this, and I gave it a 4 stars. Then we have another 5-star read for the month, and that was Network Effect by Martha Wells. This is the newest Murderbot installment, and it's the first like full-length novel installment. This was so good. I just love Murderbot, alright? I can't get enough of Murderbot. The series is about a security unit. It's a high... Siri, stop it. The series is a high science sci-fi where we follow Murderbot, who's a security unit and has hacked their own like command module, so they're in control of themselves, whereas most security units are not, and they're then like hired to do stuff, whereas normally they're like hired, but they're like property, not people. And because Murderbot is technically genderless, they're doing private jobs instead, and they've got complex human-y feelings, and it's just funny and so sassy. Like the way they think the inner dialogue in this is just so good. I don't know how to explain Murderbot in a way that will make you want to read it, but it's just like so good. You should read it. It's great. It is hard sci-fi, but it's also written in a way that I think is really accessible. So there's that. It's great. Then I listened to Bone Cries Moon by Catherine Purdy. This is the first in a duology, I think. And we follow a main character. I can't even remember her name right now. So Bone Cries Moon is about characters whose name I can't remember. But there's a group of women who ferry the dead. But to become one of these people, their like rite of passage, they blow this flute, and their like one true love comes to them, and they spend like a year with them, maybe get preggers, and then they have to kill them. That's like the rite of passage. I don't know. I gave this 3 stars. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it. It was a little bit generic fantasy for me, but it wasn't bad. I think I would maybe pick up the sequel also on audiobook and just kind of zoom through it at another stage. It was fun. But yeah, nothing groundbreaking, let's just say that. Then I read another 5-star read of the month, And that was Take a Hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. I read this in a day. I loved it. We follow Danica and Zafir. And Zafir is the security guard at the building that Dani works. Dani's a PhD student working in like intersectional feminism. They have a drill in the building, like a fire drill, and Dani gets stuck in the elevator and Zafir like comes to rescue her, and like he's carrying her out of the building in his arms, and everyone's like, ooh, they're in love. Like it goes viral on social media. And he runs a like mental health through sports for men kind of program, and it gets a lot of good publicity for the program. So he asks Dani if they can fake date to keep that up for the program, and Dani just wants to get laid, so she's like, all right, why not? Because she's into him but not into relationships. So they're fake dating. She doesn't want a relationship, but they're falling for each other, and it was glorious. Yeah, 5 stars for this. It was amazing. I love this series. I 5-starred Chloe Brown as well, and I can't wait for Eve Brown, which is coming sometime next year. This was just so good. It was so good. I immediately like bought both of these books for April and had them sent to her because I wanted to read them so much. Then I DNF'd High Fire by Ian Colfer. This is an adult fantasy, fabulism, urban fantasy. We follow, no, it's urban fantasy, I think. We follow, honestly, I don't even know the characters. But there's a drunk dragon in the Louisiana swamp. For me, this just felt too like forced American. Ian Colfer's Irish. And I didn't get very far into it at all, but I was not enjoying it, so I DNF'd it. Yep. Then I read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I ended up giving this a 4 stars, but I can totally understand why people would hate it. This is obviously the prequel novel to The Hunger Games. It is boring, I'll give you that. There's not that much that happens, but I was absolutely fascinated by the character dynamics and all the deeper analysis stuff. I literally went for like half an hour about this in one of my vlogs. Like I was just obsessed with the under nuanced stuff, but the overall plot is kind of dry and boring. Yeah, 4 stars. I talked so much about this in my vlog. I'm not gonna go over it here, but if you want to know more of my thoughts, go check out the vlog that this is in. Then I read The June Boys by Court Stevens. I gave this one a 3 stars. I listened to most of this, and read along for some of it. It is a young adult thriller, kind of, but I think it's more actually like a character dynamic exploration that just happens to have a thriller component as like the driving event. And essentially these boys get every however many years, these boys get taken and then released 13 months later. And our main character's cousin is taken, and then one of the boys of this round gets found dead, and it's kind of them trying to get the kid, her cousin, back and exploring everything. It's weird. I think it has some writing flaws that make it really not suitable for maybe a non-American audience. Like, the cousin is writing these letters to who is a woman who is actually a real life like person who escaped captivity, but that's not made incredibly clear from the get-go. That's a bit super vague, and the timeline is also confusing between those letters and what's happening in the rest of the plot. And I feel like all of those things just could have been neatly like explained a bit better, and holding them back did nothing. So it's got a 3 stars from me. I was intrigued. I didn't call the ending, but there was some craft stuff I think could have been done better. Next up we have another audiobook, and this was Sisters of Sword and Song by it's here. It's here. This is another YA fantasy that again I gave 3 stars. I don't know whether it's because I've read it on audiobook or if it is just a little generic, but this was like, I hate to say that they're generic. Like, it just didn't have anything that stood out as super special for me, which is to say they're not enjoyable, just nothing like spectacular. This one follows 2 sisters, and they were split. Like, one sister was taken away to like join this magical army, and then she kills her partner in like training for a mission, and so she's sentenced to like 5 years in prison, 5 years on a labor camp, and 5 years working in a household, in like a rich guy's household. And her sister is like, no, she'll never survive all that, so she says she'll take on 5 of these, or she'll take on half the sentence. They're like, no, you can't take half, but you can take the 5 years like helping out as a servant. So she does that, and then they kind of end up entangled in this big plot to like take over the crown. Honestly, how that all developed, I got a bit confused. It's not super clear in my mind now, and I'm not sure if it was super clear in my mind at the time I was reading it, but some of the elements of this were really fun. The magic system was really interesting. It was brutal from the get-go, which I appreciate. Like, be prepared to go hard or go home for me. Like, fantasy should have high stakes in my opinion. And that bit I really enjoyed. But overall the audiobook was just average for me. Like, it was good but nothing special, so it was 3 stars. Then I read The Mercies by Kieran Millwood Hargrave. This is a historical fiction about this island in Norway. Yes, Norway. And there was a storm, and all the men died. So there's only women left, so they take up a lot of the responsibilities for hunting, getting food, you know, all those good things that the men had been doing. But the Danish, at this time, Denmark and Norway were like one big country, and the king of Denmark is like, we are being very, very Catholic or Christian, and his name was Christian, but they were being he was really, really pushing Catholicism. And there's a native group in Norway who were following more of a pagan kind of religion, and so this is following the witch hunts that took place at the time from the like Christian missionaries that the king was sending out to this area. And a lot of the people that died in this particular witch hunt were these women in this town who had taken on a lot of the responsibilities of the men, and then were blamed for like the storm that caused the men to die. This I found absolutely fascinating. It does have a sapphic relationship in here, which I thought was really well done. It's hard-hitting, it's dark, it's gory, the whole witch trial stuff, but I thought it was also really powerful, really engaging, and I gave it 5 stars. It was really, really good. Then I listened to the audiobook for Camp by Elsie Rosen. This is a contemporary queer story. We're following what's our main character's name? Randall, who is attending, he goes to this queer camp all the time, every year. It's like a summer camp that runs for like 4 weeks, I think, every summer. I don't know how some camps work. Is that normal? I don't know. And he's decided this year he's going to change his aesthetic and be more like athletic gay to get the attention of this guy he's had a crush on. And so he kind of like presents himself as a new student and cuts out of like all the drama programs and things and starts doing all the athletic programs to try and get this guy's attention. So it's like a bit of a like Grease element, but also with a like catfishing kind of element. I didn't love the romance, only because I don't really like deception based romances, full stop. but I love Elsie Rosen's writing. I think it's so good. I love reading male romances written by male authors, by gay male authors. And this was just super fun. I think I like Jack of Hearts and Other Parts a little better than this one, which was his previous book, but I still thought this was really, really well written. I love all the like hominess of the general queer stuff involved, but yeah, the relationship just wasn't perfect for me, so I gave it a 4 stars. But more just like part of the premise. It's not my favorite trope. Then I read Queen of Queen and Whispers by Helen Corcoran. This is a young adult, new adult fantasy romance, I want to call it, because I feel like the romance is the primary plot, between Leah and Zanya. So Sapphic. Leah is the queen. She's like recently inherited as a teen, late teen, and Zanya is her like spy master. So it's a queen bodyguard spy master romance, and it's Sapphic. It's glorious, but I was not aware of how much the romance would be the primary plot going into this, and it really is. The rest of the plot is kind of secondary to the romance. There is a plot, but it's secondary. And it's a lot more just about political maneuverings and how that places strain on their relationship. I loved this. I gave it 4 stars. I think it just was not quite what I was expecting, but the relationship is good. It was good. I also read the prequel that goes with this, which is a like 3 times and 1 time kind of story. Like 3 times they nearly met and the 1 time they did, that kind of story. Classic fanfiction stuff. And I really enjoyed those 2, though like there's not much to comment on for those. They got a 4. They were fun, but like it was a little prequel novella. But I really, really loved this book. It was super good. And it's standalone, I think. Next up, I listened to Dangerous Remedy by Kat Dunn. I loved this audiobook. I gave it 4 stars. It's a historical fiction with a sci-fi element set in Robespierre's France. So they guillotine everyone, and we're following a group of queer people. Mostly, I think they're all queer, but 2 girls in a sapphic relationship plus their friends, and their job is kind of to break out innocent people from prison before they're about to be chuchunged, and they end up saving this girl who has kind of like an ability, but it's like rooted in science, to electrocute people. Like she has an electric touch. And they free her, and then people are after her, and it's all a kind of conspiracy thing. It's the first in a series. I can't wait for more because I really, really enjoyed it. It was super fun and engaging. The writing style was great. The romance was great. It was a secondary romance with a primary like action plot, and it was so good. So good. One of the best historical fictions I've read in a while, especially on audiobook. I had a great time reading it. It was so much fun. I can't wait for more. And I think the second one's gonna have some like on sea elements. Then I DNF'd Sword of Fire by Catherine Kerr. I didn't realize that this is actually like the 16th book in a series, but like following a new trilogy. And for me, I was just confused straight from the bat. It says it's a jumping in point, but I didn't think so. Also, it has like a medievally like vocal style in the dialogue, and like where they all say weird words that don't make sense. Like it's trying to be like old English, but then only like certain words in the sentence, which like I guess you have, how else do you do it? But I don't know, it really didn't work for me. I was trying to listen to this on audiobook and it just was not working. I wasn't enjoying my time. I wasn't interested in the characters or the plot, and because the world wasn't being well developed, because it was kind of assumed you already knew the world really well, that wasn't working for me either. So I gave up and DNF'd this pretty early in as well. Then I read My Dark Vanessa by Elizabeth Russell, which I gave 5 stars. This is a hard-hitting adult contemporary following Vanessa, who when she was a teenager had a sexually explicit relationship with her high school English teacher, but she always thought it was like the great love romance of her life. But then another one of his students comes forward accusing him of sexually assaulting her, and she's kind of dealing with like reassessing her relationship in the frame of abuse. And it was fascinating. It was gross to read. I had a hard time. I was a lot of it, but I thought it was really powerful, and I kind of want to throw it at people because it was really good. And I gave it 5 stars. But yep, it's super triggering. Be aware, like if you want to know if you have any specific triggers you want to ask me if they're in this, please let me know. But yeah, pedophilia is gross. Then I read Again by E. Lockhart, which I gave 4 stars. I have read nearly everything else, maybe everything else E. Lockhart has written. And this is set in the same world as the disreputable history of Frankie Landau Banks, at the same school that one's based at, but with new characters. And we follow Adelaide, and she's kind of living out her summer. Her brother has an opioid addiction, like a narcotics addiction, and so her and her dad are working at the school that's in Frankie Landau Banks, and her mum is at home with her brother, and she hasn't spoken to her brother in a long time because she doesn't know how to like work around that dynamic. And she has just been broken up with by a guy she was seeing through the last couple of months of school, and she's dealing with her own self, her own growth, but also like boys and stuff. But it's kind of told in like multiple snippets of different ways things could have gone. Like it'll have the plot, but then like each of these sections is like a different way the conversation could have gone, kind of thing. It's pretty short. I thought it was really fascinating, and I really enjoyed my time reading it. I read it in like a day. I don't think it was perfect, but I gave it 4 stars. It was pretty good. I read Out Now Queer We Go Again, which is an anthology of queer stories, sci-fi, current, fantasy, set today. And I give this 3 stars. This is a perfect example of an anthology where there were some stories I loved and some stories I hated, and plenty that I was ambivalent about, which is kind of my normal anthology experience. I've just had really good luck lately with anthologies. This one didn't hold up. I didn't love this. I didn't hate it, but it was just very average. I did struggle to get through it. 3 stars. Then I read Lady Hotspur by Tessa Gratton. This was a 4-star from me. This is a retelling of Henry VIII Part 1, which I read earlier in the month, which is why I read that earlier in the month. I didn't love this as much as I liked The Queens of Innis Lear, and for me I think that was that the pace and the plot were a little too plotting, and I didn't quite understand where they were trying to lead, whereas Queens of Innis Lear I feel like had more of a driving idea for the plot. This kind of meandered. But I liked all the character dynamics, that it's super queer, and the writing and the magic and everything is super fascinating. This is a companion to Queens of Innis Lear, and I do think it's really interesting, and I would love to read more in this world still. But for me, this one was just not quite as good as Queens of Innis Lear, so it's a 4 stars. Then we had A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This is the first in a series of young adult thrillers, mystery thrillers. They're podcast elements. We're following Pippa, who is trying to solve this girl's missing persons case. Everyone thinks they know who did it, and that he then killed himself and it was the boyfriend, but she doesn't think that's right, so she's like going on a mission. I love this. I didn't catch the ending at all. I thought it was really well developed, really twisty. Again, I think I read this in like 24 hours. I really enjoyed this. I gave it a 4 stars, and I immediately went and picked up the sequel. I also read Be Not Far From Me by Mindy McGuinness. I read this in like 3 hours. It's pretty short. This is a survivalist story. We follow our main character, I can't remember her name, Ashley, and she's like always been like a camper, hiker kind of person. But she's camping with her friends, and her boyfriend has sex with his ex while they're all at this campsite, and she gets mad about it and storms off and ends up lost in the wilderness. and she has to get back. She ends up chopping off half her foot. It's all very dramatic and gross, and I really enjoyed it. Again, I gave it 4 stars. It was intense. I read it really fast. It was super easy to get through. It was creepy. I just think survivalist stories are not my favorite, like horror-y kind of story. They don't impact me as much as some other horror elements do. So yeah. Then I read Race to the Sun by Rebecca Rowanhorse. This is middle grade from the Rick Riordan Presents series and it's following Navajo mythology. I really enjoyed this. Our main character, Najoni, she's not like my favorite typical protagonist. She's a bit of a tomboy, but I really loved the plot. I really loved the family dynamics, and yeah, it was really good. It's a 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, and it's a standalone if you're looking for that from something from Rick Riordan Presents. And finally, right at the end of the month, I finished Loveless by Alice Oseman. This is her newest release and is following Georgia as she comes to terms with her asexuality and romantic romance expression. I don't know how you say that in a sentence. And I enjoyed this, but it's definitely chaos queers. Georgia is not a good person, but that's a common theme in Alice Oseman's books, that the main character is not a good person. And she's kind of having a growth journey. I did see a common critique of this was that they felt like it framed her experience as the asexual journey, and I don't think it does that. I think that's something readers put on a book, not authors or the book itself, but that's just my opinion. And the, like, what am I even trying to say? I enjoyed this. I liked that it was college setting, like university setting. Her previous stuff has been high school. I like Will a little older. I also like that she stayed in her lane a bit more, writing from the point of view of a white character and not a non-white character like some of her previous books, which is a choice. I do think this has a little bit of ethnic diversity, but I will say I can't comment to it, but I've heard it's, like, I've read from other people, from PSC reviewers, that it's all very one-dimensional and not very nuanced. So that's the thing. But the ace representation, I think, was done well for the particular type of ace representation is. I want more different types in books, but that's a topic for publishing, not for this book. And I did really enjoy the development of the story. It was super entertaining, even though she is super chaotic as a character, like major chaos, but I thought it was really wholesome in the end. Like, the whole development was really sweet. And yeah, I ended up giving this a 4 stars as well. So those are all the books that I read in the month of August. Yes, there was too many. Yes, I'm tired. Yes, I've been filming for too long. But thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these and you'd like to chat with them down below. Chat with me about them down below. And otherwise, I'll see you soon with another video. Keep an eye out this month. I'm not doing a TBR, which I mentioned in my haul. It's now way too late in the month to do a TBR anyway, for me. But I am doing live rolls because I'm participating in Becca's Bookathon, so I'm rolling the dice every day live on, well, not live, but on my Twitter. So keep an eye out for those if you're interested in finding out what I'm reading every day. And I am going to be vlogging that whole experience, so keep an eye out for vlogs as well for the Bookathon and not safe for workathon because they're overlapping, and I'm going to be fitting proms in for both. So keep an eye out on my Twitter for live updates on that regard, and keep an eye out for vlogs. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon in another video. Bye!